David, how's it going?
Hi, thanks for having me on the show and the summit. Really pleased to be here.
Absolutely, man. There's so many things to cover. And the reason I love talking ETFs is because you kind of get a little bit of taste of everything, right? So I'm really excited to kind of talk to you. And let's kind of dive right into what is it that your, company does, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty under the hood.
Sure, absolutely. And it was a great segment prior on mental health, neuroscience there. So at Tema, we take an institutional grade approach in ETFs. We actively manage portfolios in our ETFs. We take a basically institutional grade approach on fundamental research and risk management and operate that on some of the most compelling themes, for example, in healthcare. And as we mentioned before, the output are things like just an actively managed fund in areas like cardiovascular metabolic disease. That area, in our view, represents an excellent long-term investment opportunity with broad scale implications.
Now, there's so many things with ETF. One of the reasons, like I mentioned, is because it's diversified. I feel like you especially need that in the healthcare sector as well. So what's your approach, right? In terms of Tema's approach to investments that differ from the traditional investment strategies in terms of picking stocks? And more so, how does it align with the healthcare industry's outlook, especially in 2024?
Absolutely. So we do examine many of the technologies and unmet needs within healthcare, and we identify long-term investment trends that we feel are compelling, and then thereby set out to construct bottom-up, company by company, a portfolio that's involved in that investment theme, whether it's right. Cardiovascular disease, neuroscience, or oncology. And then from that, we construct from a bottom-up approach a portfolio. We actively manage our investments with criteria that include things like business model strength, valuation, and products that transform healthcare. And many times our portfolios are somewhat different than some of our peers in biotech or some of the large diversified healthcare funds as a result of our focus in particular themes.
Whenever you're trying to, you have your speculative, I'm from like the crypto and the stocks world, right? So you have your speculative stuff in terms of the crypto, then you've got your blue chips, but then you've also kind of got your small cap and mid cap. To me, when I'm looking at those companies, fundamentally, I have to look at them a little bit different because a track record in the past has been different that kind of may dictate what the future would look like in terms of volatility. When you're looking at healthcare, do you kind of have a similar scope as well, especially when it comes to innovative therapies versus the technology side and anything else that you might be looking at?
Well, absolutely. Our quote unquote North Star is to find products that address unmet needs, but really transform those areas. Those are very important. It's easier said than done. And to your point on different types of companies that exist or different type of assets, we do try to construct a portfolio that sort of takes a long-term approach and we hope to generate good investment returns over a business cycle. And so we look at the small speculative companies that are pre-revenue that could have breakthrough clinical data. We look at companies that are on the scope of profitability that are generating revenues in a particular drug very quickly, and we try not to overpay for that. And we also have more defensive companies to balance out our portfolio that are very large established players with excellent R&D operations.
Then when we move on to the ETF side, right? So we talked about individual stocks and your different strategies with different lenses based on what type of company they are in terms of therapies, technology, innovative side of things. Tema also offers a cardiovascular and metabolic ETF. I believe the ticker is HRTS. Tell us about this ETF and the investment opportunity it provides to people at home.
Well, no doubt, it's a very exciting time to follow developments in a number of areas in cardiovascular metabolic diseases. I mean, obviously, obesity is on the cusp of a revolution in therapeutics with the onset of incretin-based therapies. And we just note that the unmet need expands beyond in the U.S. In the U.S., of course, 50% plus overweight, obese population, but look globally. And so heart disease itself is an area of focus in our ETF, HRTS, which is still the most common cause of death. that
Yeah.
place itself is witnessing, beyond obesity therapeutics, we're seeing a renaissance of therapies driven by many, many years of improvements in our insights in biology, particularly genetic insights, as well as tools like gene sequencing. And our view is that in aggregate, it's a good time to invest. In aggregate, if you look at the healthcare sector, it's actually trading at reasonable valuations at still, I think, roughly an 8% discount. If you look at the S&P healthcare sector versus the S&P multiple, roughly an 8% discount.
Yeah.
So a long-term investor can participate in this burgeoning area of medicine through HRTS.
And then when we've been talking about innovation, so let's talk about trends in the healthcare space, some that I know you're taking advantage of in the ETFs that we just talked about. So what are some of the trends and innovations that you're seeing in the healthcare space, particularly that are interesting and exciting to you, not just for 2024, but also taking a little bit longer than that as well?
For sure. It's a long-term opportunity in the entire space writ large. Of course, GLP-1s and many different approaches in obesity are represented in our fund. But we also have to mention other important facets that are features in our funds, like genetic medicines that go after large and small devastating heart conditions. So, to that point, we're witnessing an acceleration in drug discovery enabled by better tools in these areas. No doubt, AI, which affects many different other industries, will be the same with drug discovery. And then finally, let's not forget that structurally, a lot of these large pharma companies out there have very good balance sheets, generate a lot of cash flow, but have looming patent issues, several tens of billions of dollars of revenues at risk throughout this decade. And so that will enable a robust M&A environment in areas like cardiovascular disease, but also areas in things like neuroscience too. So it applies to other verticals within healthcare.
And then the last one for me, you have so much is going on in the healthcare world. How are y'all staying on top and informed about the trends that are going on, the developments as well, especially because it could have meaningful impact on the positive side in terms of ROI?
Yes, the whole goal of finding those transformative therapies in unmet needs and do it in a manner that's underappreciated is basically the goal of any investor, right? It's easier said than done. We try. We do attend medical conferences. We, for sure, try to be on top of advances in medical literature. We have direct interactions with a number of leading academic institutions to gain an edge. And, like others, we follow interesting public, but also private companies out there. And we speak to experts in the field.
Well, hey, I'm happy to speak to you here today. Thank you so much for joining me. I love talking ETFs. Like I say, we've heard of diversification ever since I was little. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and all that good stuff. So I appreciate you for joining us here today.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate being on.